Welcome back to Taiwan Talk on ICRT FM 100. I'm Ryan Drillsma, and today I speak to Mark Xu, founder and chairman of consulting agency and back office service provider 11th Fleet. In this episode, we discuss outsourcing and service provision, the evolution of business practices in the new age, and what Taiwan can offer new businesses. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the show, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And as I will have mentioned in the introduction to this podcast, Mark Xu is the founder of consulting agency 11th Fleet. So today we're going to talk about the business environment in Taiwan. But first, I want you to start by telling us a bit about 11th Fleet itself and how that came to be.
Sure. I think you could think of 11th Fleet as a one-stop shopping, what I usually call sort of your back office solution provider at the 0 to 1 stage. And it really started because I've been, in the Taiwan kind of startup ecosystem for a good 10 to 15 years now. And I think in Taiwan, within the startup context, a lot of people talk about, having an ecosystem, referring ourselves to Silicon Valley. And so one of the, kind of impetuses behind 11th Fleet was really like for an ecosystem to be complete, it's really not just about the capital or the entrepreneurs. Really, Silicon Valley is what Silicon Valley is because it has a very complete kind of ecosystem of service providers. And of course, in Taiwan, if you've done business in Taiwan, especially if you're non-Taiwanese, you do find it kind of challenging. And so that was one reason. And the secondary reason was just that, there is a global sort of talent shortage. And I saw that whenever I headed back to the States. And I just kind of thought, wouldn't it be great if we could kind of convince some of these companies, in Silicon Valley to set up in Taiwan, where although Taiwan is a small market, but when it comes to like the labor market, it is not small because it has 23 million people. So I thought that, that was really, the reason why I started 11th Fleet.
Okay, and you say Silicon Valley, for example, is much like an ecosystem. It's about the services it offers, and you offer a lot of services for your clients, payroll, recruitment, investor outreach. Would you say 11th Fleet is unique in Taiwan in that it's one of the few organizations that offers this combination of things to business owners?
That's right. I think in the U.S., especially in Silicon Valley, things are, startups can move so quickly because the founders can just focus on, what is essential for the business, and they can outsource everything, right? Obviously, legal, sort of payroll, HR, back office. They don't even need to hire like a CFO. Many startups work with outsourced CFO. And so in Silicon Valley, these are all very kind of unique. In Taiwan, 11th Fleet, kind of because we're at the fledgling stages of this ecosystem, 11th Fleet is currently sort of a one-stop shop. But that's the idea is really that, I think in order to move quickly, Taiwanese startups or Taiwanese businesses in general need to kind of get used to or kind of adopt this idea of, outsourcing the non-core items.
Do you think this kind of outsourcing is more efficient than the traditional ways that businesses are run here?
I think so, yeah, for sure. One of the reasons I did this was because I had been an operator of many sort of small businesses as well. And I just found that, I was spending a lot of time and energy just on, accounting, on a lot of miscellaneous sort of admin stuff that while important, was not additive to the business. And then gradually over time, I got to a scale where in my business where I could have one or two people dedicated to doing just the admin, right? But I think if you're just starting out, you don't have the skill, and yet, I see many businesses hire just one or two people just to deal with the admin when they're not even, at that stage where they could, cover their costs. So I think not only it's from a cost perspective, but also from a speed perspective, right? And I think in the context of startups, you just need to move very, very quickly.
Okay, so can you describe in some more detail some of the services that you offer to business owners, who you outsource these things to, and who are some of the partners that you work with?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, basically, we work with, I think, in terms of partners, we work with three primary parties. One are CPA firms or licensed accountants. Secondly, we work currently with a legal firm. And then thirdly, we work with individual bookkeepers. And what we do, especially I think for the foreign community, is that I think we're able to, for example, maintain the books in English using software that is out, for example, Zero and QuickBooks. So I think one of the advantages or what we offer that is unique is that for the foreign company or the foreign entrepreneur, they're able to better look at the health of their business, which I think up until very recently was very, very cumbersome to do because what you need to do is outsource to your Taiwan kind of bookkeeper or accountant, and then usually the software, if there is a software at all, is obviously in Chinese. So I think just the fact that we're able to provide sort of a very kind of readable, financials for the business owner, that is already a huge step.
Can you talk about some of the businesses that you have helped cultivate and how your services benefited them?
Sure. There are three businesses that come to mind. One is a company, done by Peterson, who is a longtime resident of Taiwan, had embarked on his startup, Woodpecker Learning, and I think we were able to help him just kind of demystify the whole process of just starting a company in Taiwan. Although he had been here a long time, but this was his first startup venture. And so what Woodpecker Learning was, it's a language learning app. It's doing very well. So I think by being the back office, we allowed Peter to just focus on what was relevant for developing out an app. So he didn't have to hire anyone else other than his core team of engineers and designers.
Okay, so for new businesses, you're sort of taking the strain of having to deal with all these other things that they might not have expertise in, and then outsourcing them to people who know what they're doing, essentially.
That's right. I mean, essentially, it allows, like, for example, a small company, like a startup, to save on a headcount of having like an office manager or an assistant.
Do you think that businesses in Taiwan are moving towards this model?
I think my feeling is that eventually Taiwanese businesses will also need to adopt this mindset of outsourcing. And, I can already see it in the last 2 years. I think the job market here is very, very tight. If you ask any business owner who's trying to hire, like a millennial, like a recent grad, one is you find that that's very difficult to find candidates. Number two is that the starting wage is now substantially higher than a few years ago. And then number three, I think it's like, young people these days, they're very choosy about, their jobs, right? So they don't want to be stuck in a very mundane position. So I think business owners will eventually need to embrace, outsourcing, right? And the easiest part to outsource really are the more kind of, routine tasks, right? Such as payroll, general admin, compliance. And in the U.S., this is a huge thing that, they're like, they call it, kind of adopting software as a service. They're doing payroll as a service, HR as a service, so it's, I think, in response to this sort of shortage of talent globally.
For business owners, for those who have been in the business world for a while and they're used to this traditional business model, would this give them less control over their business, or would there be any chance of miscommunication? Because obviously not everybody is in the same building at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are concerns and there are challenges, but I think a lot of it is really just kind of not having a firm understanding of how outsourcing works. I think the biggest, like the topic that I often see the most that's kind of relevant to this, but is really like, for example, Taiwanese companies really want to store like any information locally on their servers, right? Whereas like in the West now, it's very clear that if the company can just outsource to Amazon or Microsoft or Google and just put everything in the cloud, right? And then the Taiwanese business owners' arguments that, oh, what happens if you get hacked? And the information is on the cloud, right? But clearly, in recent months, there have been attacks on Taiwanese companies, large Taiwanese companies who hosted their data locally. And my argument, my counter argument to this is like, really, I mean, over time, does any one individual company, or can any one individual company really stack up, and be competitive with Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, right? So what I mean is, I don't think let's ask the hackers to stop. They won't stop. They'll still continue, right? But I guess my point is just that it's very difficult now because Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, they're the ones who have the budget to hire the best sort of cybersecurity experts and the tools. So actually, this trend of outsourcing will continue, right? Because people who are specialists, companies or people who specialize in something over time will achieve sort of an economy of scale. And this is, it's the antithesis of like this Taiwanese thinking, because Taiwanese is always about control. But I think over time, in my opinion, there's no question that, the current trend will prevail, right? Just because we're now moving to a world of incredible specialization.
Right. Okay. So I want to move on to discussing doing business in Taiwan in general. What do you think makes the business environment in Taiwan friendly to international entrepreneurs? Are there particular policies or incentives that can assist people?
Yeah. I mean, to be very frank, Taiwan's not the easiest place on first glance. But I think what attracts, what makes Taiwan Taiwan, and what attracts people who are not from Taiwan to stay in Taiwan is really the fact that, Taiwan is very, very unique. And it's a place that really grows on you. I think, especially for the ICRT community, I think a lot of people can attest to that. And it's a place that you want to root for. So I think, that's my honest opinion. It's like, on first glance, like Taiwan is not the easiest place to do business, especially when you compare it to traditional hubs like Singapore and Hong Kong. But I think, at least with many of our clients, they have a personal linkage to Taiwan now. And they just kind of want to do something, they see themselves, living here, and they want to, give back, or they want to start a business here and hire, locally. So I think, that has a lot, going for Taiwan. I mean, I think, Taiwan is still an underdog, but I think it's someone that I think many people will root for or want to root for.
Okay, has 11th Fleet dealt with any entrepreneurs or startup owners that aren't necessarily long-term residents of Taiwan, so they don't know that much about the place, but they've identified a market in Taiwan that they want to tap into?
I think, to be honest, it's been difficult. When I first started this in 2019, one of the original vision was like knocking on some doors in Silicon Valley, convincing them that like all the way across the world, there's this island nation with lots of tech talent, and maybe you'd consider setting up like a hub in Taiwan. And to be honest, even pre-COVID, we found that to be a very, very difficult sell. And so by that time, we had pivoted. We realized that the conversation needs to be with someone who is already familiar with Taiwan. And so for us, it was really two groups of people, like what I call the hyphenated Taiwanese, like overseas Taiwanese, Taiwanese Americans, Taiwanese Canadians, Taiwanese Australians, etc. And secondly, we found that the people who were familiar with Taiwan were people from the neighboring countries, like for example Hong Kong, Singapore. They also face a tech shortage or a tech talent shortage, and they were familiar with Taiwan's sort of workforce, highly educated, with high integrity. So I think, to be honest, it's still very difficult for someone who's not familiar with Taiwan and say, hey, I've heard good things and I just want to be in Taiwan. I think usually our experience is there's someone, let's say, within the organization that's somewhat familiar with Taiwan and is an advocate. And then we come in and say, oh, here's the regulatory side we can help you set up. But I think, someone needs to make the case for Taiwan.
What sort of businesses do have a better chance of succeeding in Taiwan?
I think, Taiwan is a small market. So I think if you're the business that's predicated on a large market, like scale, then it doesn't work too well from Taiwan. From 11th Fleet's perspective, what we're really pitching is that Taiwan is a great place to build a hub, and it can help your business, in your home market or globally. And I think, in general, Taiwan's workforce is very, very diligent. So what we tell, quite frankly, is that, if you're looking for like a visionary and architect and you're hoping to hire that person out of Taiwan, that may be a bit of a stretch. But if you're looking for a team that, works well, that will, sort of execute on the vision and, and then kind of work with integrity, work hard, those types of positions can be filled in Taiwan.
What are some common mistakes you see startups make in Taiwan, and how do you make sure your clients don't fall into the same traps?
Yeah, I think in general, the Taiwanese startups, I feel like they just think about the Taiwan market. And again, I think, in our conversation, Taiwan is a small place. So I think if they're hyper local, then that's going to be a problem because the market is only so big. So obviously, when I think, like for example, foreign prospective clients come, to Taiwan, or they learn about Taiwan, and they kind of assume that all Taiwan looks like Taipei, then I begin to point out that Taiwan, although Taipei is very, very affluent, the whole country does not look like Taipei, right? It's Taipei probably has like comparable spending power as Hong Kong and Singapore, but you can't extrapolate that out to all 23 million people. Taipei is maybe, like 7 million, Taipei and Taipei City. So that's one, right? And again, our premise is really just that Taiwan, has a great pool of knowledge workers. And I think, if the idea is leveraging knowledge workers, then I think it could work in Taiwan.
Okay, finally, just because you mentioned earlier that people who tend to invest in Taiwan already have this knowledge of the place, the challenge seems to be, how does Taiwan get more people to know more things about Taiwan itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for people in the know, like in the semiconductor industry, the PC or the, mobile handset industry, they are aware, but obviously only a very small subset of people work in those industries, right? So I think, it needs to be kind of like, multiple parties need to be involved. I think, obviously the government has done, I think a good job in recent years in trying to promote the country, but it's something that just requires time. I'm hoping that, the private sector, that is, Taiwan's entrepreneurs or Taiwan-based entrepreneurs, can really kind of blaze new paths and build great companies, and then let the world know that company, was built in Taiwan. So I think the best way is really for the private sector to step up and, to achieve success. And then this way, I think, the success, will breed further success, right? People, start asking, how are you able to do this and whatnot? And hopefully one day we'll the world will notice Taiwan that way.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Mark. If people want to find out more about your organization, 11th Fleet, and the services you offer, where can they find this?
Yeah, just go to our website. It's www.11, like the number 11, fleet, FLEET.com.
All right. Well, thank you again for speaking to us today. That was Mark Xu, founder and chairman of consulting agency and back office service provider 11th Fleet. Thanks for listening, and catch us next time for an all-new episode. Hi, I'm Ryan Drilsma.
And I'm Trevor Tortomasi.
And we're the co-hosts of Taiwan Talk.
You can catch our show on ICRT every Monday during the 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. newscasts.
Or you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, SoundOn, or wherever you might usually find podcasts.
New episodes are uploaded every Monday night.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with a new guest.